something to do with relationship, like a spouse or a partner, something to do with career, and something to do with parenting. And of course, there are other ones too. Obviously, like taking care of our older parents, or taking care of somebody with cancer, or our own illness, whatever it is. But those top three were something to do with career, something to do with parenthood, and something to do with spouse or partner. And I thought, how fascinating, because those three things are things that we choose. Right? We don't choose to get cancer. We don't choose to have an elderly loved one with dementia, et cetera, but we do choose career, parenthood, and who we choose as our partners. And so enter the big one, shame and isolation. And of course, this year we've all been in such severe isolation, at least, I mean, and I really have out here in Montana. And I mean, I think we all have, we all have our own version of isolation. So what I loved about hearing that from people is that it means that we have become islands. So many of us have become islands. And when we are in the grocery store or whatever, and now we're all masked, how are you? Fine, fine, fine. And inside we're bleeding. And a part of what I've loved about this year is, with all the pain we've had, we also have had to really talk about our heart language. And so that's really what the book is for. It's to invite people to come out of their alienation, out of being an island, out of isolation, out of the fear of judgment and shame, and to find people that you can trust, safe places where you can find support to tell your story. So here's the letter to the reader at the beginning of the book. And there's a quote at the top that I love. And this book is not autobiographical at all, but this one line that comes out of one of the characters in the books actually came out of my mouth. And a writer said, write that down. And then it ended up coming out of one of my characters' mouths. And it's this: we're all fluent in this language, in the language of community, and yet we so rarely speak it. It really is our mother tongue. And I think we miss that language more than ever right now. So here's the letter, and then I'll read the invitation, and I hope you'll say yes to it. Okay, dear reader, I have learned something that might just be the most important lesson of my life, and I would like to share it with you. There is a language that we crave, a language of the heart that grows from our worry and our wonder and our stories, rooted in our experience of this beautiful and heartbreaking thing called life. Too many of us have trained ourselves out of speaking that language. We were all fluent in it when we were children, but somewhere along the way, we were taught or conditioned to forget it, to not be honest when we are asked, "How are you?" and to not really listen to the answer when we ask others the same question. So many of us have lost our authentic voices and reduced our conversations to grocery store talk and texts with an emoji at the end. The truth is, we long to be seen and heard and accepted, especially when we are in pain. Yet, out of fear of judgment or rejection, we too often draw in and become islands rather than bridging to our family and friends. I know this because at times I've made that choice, and the fallout from that led me to devote a major piece of my life to bringing people together in safe, intimate circles of self-expression, which led me to write this book. I wrote Willow's Grove to capture the power of people stepping out of the isolation and self-doubt that so many of us feel in times of transition. And boy, are we in a big time of transition right now. And instead, gathering together, these women show us that we don't have to endure hardship alone, nor should we. We have choices. If, for whatever reason, connecting with our usual community is too fraught, we can instead create temporary circles, friend to friend to friend to friend, carving out small interludes from our daily lives in order to focus on what comes next, to have those conversations we need to be having but aren't, to move boldly outside of gossip, small talk, pretending, and into the connection we so deeply need. I hope that in reading this book and in the spirit of Willa, Bliss, Harriet, and Jane, You will be inspired to reach out to your own dear friends, whether close by or far away, and that you will invite them to come together for short respites to support one another in the powerful way that people can when they give themselves permission to say yes to the profound invitations of their lives. My mission is this. We will start a movement of week-long interludes from the stresses and pain of our crossroads moments, and in radical and real communication, we will provide ourselves and our kindreds with a map for our next steps. Our voices deserve to be honored and heard. No one has your voice. No one. However we speak, now is the time for truth. And yes, we don't have to do it alone. So that's
beautiful. So beautiful.
It's more beautiful now, a year later, when we've all been through this.
It's true. It has like everything takes on a new meaning.
It makes me cry. I mean, I almost didn't write that because I was like, ew, that's cheesy. A letter to the reader. Like, I don't know. Would I read that if I was reading a book? But I'm so glad I wrote that now, because this book is a call to action. And I think that there's a lot of PTSD, a lot of pain, a lot of anxiety and depression that we all need to look at after what we're still going through. And this book just kind of creates this cozy space for people coming together in this Montana farmhouse. One woman asks a friend, who asks a third friend, who asks a fourth, and they come together, and some are resistant of it. They're all from very different demographics. And it's really about friendship, but it's also about Montana and what happens when you're in open space. So I think what I'll do, Zibby, if it's okay with you, is I'll just quickly read the invitation, because I want everybody out there to feel invited to this book, and then we can get into it. Shall we? Does that sound good to you? Okay, so here we go. The first chapter is The Women. On a typical day in their typical lives, 3 women went to their mailboxes and found, amid junk mail and bills and shiny flyers for unshiny things, an invitation sealed with a bold W pressed into sage green wax. They had been waiting for this invitation. They longed for it as much as they feared it, because to break this seal was to release a behemoth of a question so impossible that they had almost stopped asking it. Each hesitated, looked around, and in respective order thought, sweet Jesus, what the hell? Here goes nothing. And slid her finger under the seal, revealing a thick, handmade note card pressed with silvery leaves. Words winked up at them, words that might, if given the chance, change everything. They swallowed and pulled out the card. Inside, nestled with a wild bird feather, were the following words. Here's the invitation. You are invited to the rest of your life. You know you can't go on like this, not for one more day. You need an interlude. Imagine this. You are in a farmhouse in Montana, wrapped in a soft blanket, sitting by a warm wood stove. There's a cup of tea in your hand just the way you like it. There are women surrounding you who need this just as badly as you do. We all have the same question. The question is, so now what? Come to Montana and find out. Love, Willa. You don't have to do this alone. Each woman held the invitation to her heart, drew in a deep breath before letting out an exhausted sigh that echoed from Connecticut to Wisconsin to California and back to Montana, and went inside to call a dear friend. So that's how the book begins.
Even literally just hearing you read that, like my body like relaxed. Like I could feel my shoulders like a big sigh of relief. Like my shoulders literally went down when you're like, you need this. It's an interlude. You're not alone. I'm like, "Yes, thank you." And your word the way you read is like, going to a spa. It's amazing. I feel like, you should just, like, be an audiobook author and just read everybody's books because I could listen to you forever. But
Thank you.
that soulful piece, Laura, of this connection and the fact that there's a place where even just a cup of tea made the way you want it feels like such a luxury,
I know, right?
right? I mean, and I don't even like tea that much, but just the idea of it, just the idea of it sounds like heaven, that, like, your needs will be met, and you don't have to be doing 1,000 other things, and you can just, like, sit and be you. So where did you get this from? When did you start doing these retreats that now inspired all of these things? Like, why you? How did you end up this person?
Post-divorce reinvention. Let's just be completely transparent. This book was all about a marital crisis. I've hardly ever said this publicly, but why not, right? I mean, I think COVID has just taught us to be like full frontal, and I was already that way, but I'll just do it again. And this book was about learning about how to tune into the way your thoughts both serve you and sabotage you. It was all about learning about self-awareness and thought patterning. And the entry point was a marital crisis. So, and the short version of that book went crazy viral in the Modern Love column. I never in a million years would have, after writing so many books, 1 hour I wrote an essay, and that's the thing. After being rejected, I've read that, you also understand rejection. Any writer does. You never know what hits. And somehow that little essay in Modern Love, I called Those Aren't Fighting Words, Dear, which I think is still the #2 most read essay in the history of the column. Somehow that hit it. And that was almost 10 years ago. And so then I already had this book written, and my dear, wonderful agent, Beth Davy, who I think she is so lovely. She went out with it, and we got a nice book deal out of it. So I spent about the next 6 years of my life, because it was published in 9 different countries, and it was a New York Times bestselling book and an international bestselling book. I got a real chance to understand what's out there in the zeitgeist. People are not comfortable with tuning into their thought patterns, or they're really used to the old stories, right? Like the story that we've been writing in our journal year after year after year, like swirling in the vortex of woe over an old story that might have been true at one point, but isn't true necessarily now, or maybe never was. And I learned so much from that whole experience. I spoke at huge women's conference, big, huge ballrooms, 2,000 people at a time, twice a day. And then people would come up and say, I have a story. I want to speak my truth. I know that I have something to say. And then they look to their toes and look up at me over and over and over again. It was fascinating, and say, what I have to say doesn't matter. Somebody has already said it better than I ever could. Who am I to think that I have something important to say in the first place? It's self-indulgent at best. And it goes way back to, maybe somebody had a teacher when when you were a child, who said, you're not creative, you're a jock. Or maybe you went, if you were raised in the 50s, it's seen but not heard, speak when spoken to, don't show off. And I thought, man, oh man, oh man, like this is the one thing I can do. Writing is like, it's my free zone. And I said earlier, it's like my practice, my prayer, my meditation, my way of life. But I also say that writing should be up there with diet and exercise in the realm of preventative wellness. And I've been on Christiane Northrup's Hay House radio show 3 times, because she also so believes in this. So I thought that then, when I came back from that whole book promotion time of my life, and the marriage did need to end. And I thought, I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to lose my children's stability. How am I going to, I've been lucky enough to be a stay-at-home mom in a very traditional marriage where I don't have to have an income. And I thought, what am I going to do? And so I went on Facebook one day, And I wrote, because a lot of people had read, this is not the story you think it is, like, right. And it's it's very much kind of like you're sitting with a good friend having a cup of tea. And I said, hey, anybody want to go on a writing retreat with me in Montana? And also our mutual friend, Danny Shapiro, supported me in this. She's like, you're an extrovert, because she and I had done a gig together. And she's like, you're an extrovert. You're a born teacher. Do it. And I thought, me, a teacher? In 2 hours, 24 people signed up, Zibby.
Oh my gosh.
And that's when I knew I had something. I mean, it's kind of like what's happened with you this year. It's like, I love the first line of your book. This
Oh,
wasn't supposed to be me. No, I know. I don't care, because whatever, we're together in this. It's like the first line in your book is, it shouldn't have been me. And that's kind of how I feel about this whole Haven thing. So that was 9 years ago. I have over 1,000 alums, and I've been able to keep my house and my kids' security and stability. And then it inspired this whole book. So for those of you out there who are feeling desperate, I mean, thank you for the small business loan, SBA, because without it, I don't know how I would have gotten through this year. Many of us have had to have a major career pivot. But for those of you out there just wondering what's next for me, which is what Willa's Grove is all about, think about the power that you have. Think about the expertise you have, whether it's from raising children or from a career or whatever it is that you can apply that to some sort of teaching, and the world needs it. Yes, you can do it.
gosh, you're so motivational. It's amazing. I can see why. I mean, your retreats are. I feel you need like a. What can you do if you can't take a whole retreat away in Montana, but want to get you like in their ear every 2 seconds? Like, how do we get you if we can't come to the retreat? Do you? What else can we? How else can we? Aside from Willis Grove, of course.
Well, golly gee whiz. So I have been, did I just say golly gee whiz? Yeah,
Yeah,
I just said
great.
golly.
You
Let's
did it
just
better
say,
than anybody could say golly gee whiz. You pulled it
what
off.
else should we say? Like, boy, howdy, or let's rent a barn and put on a show. Um, well, I have been I'm almost toward the end of an 8-week online course called Haven Home. And it's been really great. And it's full of experts and really exceptional people. And I'm going to continue it because people are so starved for community. So that's something that I think I'll launch Haven Home again, probably later on in this year. But I really want people to come to Montana. I miss, don't you miss, like, I know you used to host um, like a writer salon. And my friend Aiden Donnelly also does that, Happier Hour, and I did hers too. I bet you know each other. Yeah, the Happier Hour. And it's just like, I miss that. I miss those artist salons. But that's my first love. But if we can do it online, then let's keep doing it.
And go back for 1 second. Now I really want you to, like, pick up this computer and show me the closet of novels that are discarded. Like, I love the image of a closet full of unpublished manuscripts. That's like I mean, that's such an ode to writing, but it's more than that. It's an ode to persistence, right? You
Yeah.
just you don't give up. So why are you not I know you love it. I know you love writing, and it's a spiritual practice and all of it, and that's great. But don't you just get bummed out? Like, why how do you continue? How do you make sure that it doesn't knock you off the path?
Well, because it's got to be for you first. I'm writing a book about self-expression right now. I wish it was out here right now. I mean, I'm almost done with it, and I just want to like give it to everybody I know and all of the 1,000 alums of all my different programs. I just want to like give it to them, and then everybody I know, truly, because if we don't know how to, let's start with this. It's all self-awareness, and it's all about getting in touch with the way our thoughts, again, sabotage us and serve us. But in whatever kind of communication, whether it's the spoken word whether it's the written word, whether it's something you cook. I mean, really, it's just any level of creative self-expression. If we can't bridge to ourselves first, then how are we ever to bridge to someone else? And I always say to people who are writers, you can turn a phrase or twist a plot or have a fabulous command of the English language until the cows come home. But if you don't have your finger on the pulse of what's behind those words, it will never connect with the person with whom you are trying to communicate, whether spoken, written. And what that means, and this is good news, everybody. It simply means we have to learn how to tap into our intuition and our imaginations. And the child in you knows exactly how to do that. So, in so many ways, it's unlearning. And I think that this year, and who knows what the next year will be, has given us the chance to tap back into that, right? Like, Zibby, you got 4 kids. I mean, because I've got 20 acres here in Montana. Last March, it was like a tent camp on my property. All of my adult children friends came back because they didn't want to be in a city. And a lot of they were like, hey, can we pitch a tent on your yard? And I said, sure. Each person gets a social distance tent. And then I've got a big bonfire pit, and you have to be 6 feet apart. And if you're closer than that, then you need a mask. And I feel like it's been a parade of 20-year-olds since last year. And you know what they wanted to do? They wanted to sit around the bonfire. They wanted to tell stories. They wanted to, I was like, years ago, I'd be like, hey, can I play the guitar? And they're like, no. They're like, play the guitar. Let's sing. I think people are just coming together in a way that is in the core of who we are and the essential nature of who we are, which we are self-expressors. We are intuitively creative, and don't ever let anybody tell you that you're not. You are, and you do have something to say, and nobody can say it like you.
Do you ever feel though that you're fighting an uphill battle against all the things working against that? I mean, this year has been such an anomaly, and it's been that part of it has been nice, this sort of getting back in touch with our caveman roots, really, right? Sitting around a fire and talking. That's like what we are as human beings, essentially. But yet, I'm worried, and I don't know how you feel about this world going back together, or even like how Willa would handle what's been going on as the world opens back up and technology and email and all this stuff. Just like it's just there are more little wedges in between our desire and ability to connect in real time, even over the phone, as of which gets thrown out the window. So, like, what can we do? What do you tell everybody? What can everyone do if they long for this connection, but society is propelling us in a different direction?
Okay, well, so I'm going to answer in a way that you might not expect, but here it is. Look up, watch the birds. They know stuff. And I think that I've been saying for years, stop the world, I want to get off. I didn't really mean stop the world, I want to get off for the global pandemic.
It stopped.
It's not my fault, I swear. But I have been wanting for so long, because I grew up in a very fast-paced way. I grew up with, excellence being what was driving me. I was, and I left that world about 30 years ago. I just can't believe it. And I really have raised my children to take walks in the woods and understand that you can learn so much from a bird migration. You can learn so much from stopping and feeling moss on a tree. And it's not just a pretty thing that you sketch. It actually is you. And there's a scene at the end of the book, and I won't give it away, but where one of the characters says, oh, I just don't want to go back to my life. I've learned so much about who I am in nature. And then Willa, again, who's not me, Willa says, Jane, you are nature. And that means you are nature in an elevator in Midtown Manhattan. You are nature anywhere you go. We are not disconnected with this world around us that we call nature. We are nature. And that might sound lofty, but it's absolutely scientific. And I'm not a scientist, but I can tell you just from sitting like right on the other side of this computer is my screen porch. And then there's a marsh behind it. And there is a marsh in Willows Grove. And there are tons of birds in Willows Grove, because one of the themes of it, it really is migration. And I had one editor say, there are too many birds in this book. And I was like, oh, good, I'm going to write more birds into it, because we can learn so much about that. And especially when you live like where you live and where I grew up, northern climates where birds migrate, when they come back and you hear that first chickadee, like my tree, that sound, right? Like that's a chickadee saying, this is my tree where I'm going to make my nest. And, I think when we're running around trying to, trains, planes, and automobiles, we're not looking up. We're not listening, but it's happening around us all the time in Central Park, but even in like a little sad tree that's got concrete around it, on Madison Avenue, there still might be a bird in it. And I think that the idea of looking up this year more than ever, not more than ever, but in our lifetime, has really helped people connect with the fact that not only is there this place called the natural world, but that we actually are in nature, and to embrace that and learn the lessons of it.
Wow. That was unexpected, but that was beautiful.
Yeah. You want to hear my bird whistle? This will really freak you out. Ready?
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Nobody's ever done that at Warwick's, I bet.
I'm impressed. My dog is on the bed being like, what is going on?
That's incredible.
I know. My dogs are, they're wondering what's going on. They think they're going for a walk. Anyway, yeah. Hi, Julie. Hi, Julie.
Oh my goodness, the chat room is going crazy. You've got so much love going on. So after this is over, Laura, go back and Zibby, you as well, if you have time. Everybody's just loving everything. So there's lots of great comments you guys can see. But we have a question from Sarah.
Okay.
But before I get to Sarah's question, I have a question real quick.
Okay.
Where did the name Willa come from?
Oh, well, Willa Cather. Well, I mean, man. Well, the short version is that, so Willa, the character Willa, her parents are academics and like literature professors. And she's left that. I am not Willa, I promise. And my parents are not academics, but they named her Willa after Willa Cather.
But that's how you came to it?
My Antonia. Yeah. Well, because who didn't love, I bet both of you women were also, when you were little, just like, ooh, like I used to put my blankets over my head with a little like handmade flashlight and read books. And I loved my Antonia. That was a big part of my childhood. So I love the name Willa. My daughter's name is Ella, and I almost named her Willa, or Franny from Franny and Zooey. But I've got a dog named Franny and a character named Willa.
You got it covered.
Yeah.
Okay, this question comes from Sarah, and it's for both of you. So we're gonna, Zibby, I'm gonna throw it to you first, and then Laura can answer. Okay, so the question is, and it goes back to what you guys were talking about a few minutes ago, in the quote of "It shouldn't have been me. It wasn't supposed to be me," is such a challenging statement of self-doubt that many women have. Can each of you answer how you silence those voices of self-doubt that keep us from stepping up? Want to answer that first? Or either one of you can go first. But
Julie, could you read the last part of that question?
Yeah.
About silencing?
How you silence those voices of self-doubt that can keep us from stepping up.
You want to take a stab first?
Sure. It's a really good question.
Good question.
I think that sometimes it takes something extraordinary to happen outside you, and you have to step up to it, and you have to stop thinking. So this pandemic, for instance, became so urgent. Like I could sense the need so urgently of what writers needed. And I realized I had something that I could do to help. And that was it. And it didn't even feel, it was bizarre that it ended up that I could help because like I randomly sort of entered this industry not too long ago. That's what I meant by it shouldn't have been me. Like there's so many other people who were more qualified essentially, but I had the whole platform, I had the microphone, I had the ability to pivot because I have this tiny team and I could do whatever. And so I think sometimes it calls for extraordinary times and listening to yourself and knowing that like you really have something to offer and then just pushing everything else out of the way and offering it up because you have to.
And just doing it. I mean, just like a bookstore didn't know how to do Zoom event. You know what I mean? You just have to do it. You just go, okay, let's go. Yeah.
That's right. That's the pivot we've all done. My answer to that would be sort of piggybacking on what you're both saying. And just to get the question right, the silence and the self-doubt. Well, so I call her or him, if there are whoever is out there, the inner critter instead of the inner critic. Because I think it's important to be playful, right? Because what I said earlier is that it's in all of us. I mean, unless you've had early childhood severe abuse, and even so, before that abuse happened, you were a free child. I've worked with many educators on many levels from daycare to PhD, and they tell me that the inner critic, which I call the inner critter, happens in about 6th grade, age 12. So think about, however old we are now, she's had a lot of practice. She's got a megaphone to our heart to tell us exactly why we don't matter, why we're not good enough, all that stuff I was saying earlier from the different speaking gigs I used to have. So what I have learned, and in this book, I wasn't even aware of her because, most of us wouldn't even speak to our worst enemies the way that we speak to ourselves in our own minds. I had no idea of what went on in here. And that's what that book was about. Now I understand after working with over 1,000 people that we all are in this together. The number one thing I hear over and over is, I'm stuck. I ask, where are you in your creative self-expression? I'm stuck. Okay. That's the inner critter. So during that time, I needed to wage war against her. And I called her my evil twin sister, Sheila. And I do not know where that came from. Probably like all my children, like in a well, 1980s. I don't know. And, but what I've learned is that while I gain that self-awareness at a certain point, I co-create with her. I invite her in, right? And so what I learned is that doesn't work because to be at war with that inner critic is to be at war with myself. So I changed it. And now I look at it like she's a scared child who knows exactly what to say to break my heart. And if your child came in the middle of the night, having night haunts and freaking out and yelling at you, or even just a teenager who's just like low blood sugar and comes home from school and is yelling and screaming and saying horrible things and slamming doors, they're just scared. So I learned to take that voice, and this is the question, think about that child, that mean voice as just a scared child, and love her into submission. And guess what? She goes to sleep. And then we can get on with the business of living our lives.
Excellent. It's a hard thing to do though, sometimes.
Oh yeah, it's impossible. I mean, I can talk like that, but I'm not always good at it. But I try every morning to. Again, just quickly, it begins with self-awareness. If you're not aware of the way you speak to yourself in your own mind, you'll never be able to be liberated from it.
Right, and it takes practice.
Oh yeah.
It really does. I mean, just because Zibby, I'm sure you felt this when you first pivoted to do this too. It's just like, and Laura, 10 years ago when you had to like switch your life, it's like, man, it's scary. And you just like, and you don't know if you're doing it right, but you just keep marching along in the right direction. And it hopefully works out.
And you don't even know what the right direction is, but you can have fun with it. Let's not forget playfulness, people. We need to remember how to play. And that's why I say, look up, look at the birds, right. Play with your dog, play with your kids, play with somebody else's kids.
Right.
Get playful and curious.
Yeah, even I'll play with my kids, just,
Send them out to me in Montana. I'm telling you, I'm going to take them horseback riding.
You talked about putting your fears to bed. I'm like, I literally like can't even get these guys to bed. How am I supposed to do this with like my innermost critic? But I'm going to try.
It goes back to, I love that you came up with the moms don't have time to, because man, is that the best moniker ever. Absolutely. Because we don't know, it really, all of a sudden one day you do kind of wake up and you go, oh, I do have some time now, when they're like gone finally. But we do have to take time. You do have to take time though. And that's what like book clubs and things like that, we do have to carve out that time for ourselves. You know?
I mean, ironically, it came out of a time when I actually had too much time because I had gotten divorced and my kids were going to my ex-husband's, and for the first time in forever, it was quiet on the weekends. And I was like, what is this? What do I do now? So this whole Willows Grove Havens retreat, rebranding of ourselves. It's like, what next? There's nothing like a life-changing event to make you rethink everything.
Amazing. Okay, we're running out of time. And so quickly, Laura, are you going to do more? I mean, I know you talked about it. So are there going to be more online, those 8-week retreat things? Are you planning to do more of those virtually?
Yes. Well, I don't have anything on the calendar right now, but it is called Haven Home, and it is an 8-week course. I think I'll probably be doing it again. Isn't it one long day? It's like, where are we? I think like, are we in 2021? It's like, yeah. I think, okay, this is spring. Oh no, I'm in winter. Probably, I don't know. Further on in 2021. I don't have anything on the calendar, but what I do have on the calendar are 2 Haven writing retreats in Montana in September, 1 in October, and you can find out all about those on my website, lauramunson.com. We arrange for an informational interview, and it's just the 2 of us, and we talk about where you are in your creative journey and how the retreat could be a match for you. But more than anything else, I really want, this is something that's important. I really want to advocate for people to, again, get into that mind awareness. And so every Friday, and I've done this every single Friday since March, with the exception of 3 days, one of them being Christmas, I've done this thing called So Now What Writing. It's free. And it's journaling. It's all it is journaling, because I think that in this time, we have to figure out how we can help, like what Zibby's done. It's like, how can I help? What can I do? And I came back from that book tour and I thought, okay, what can I do? So I do it for free. There's no gimmicks, no games. It's just show up on Friday, Mountain Standard Time at 4:00. That's 6:00 Eastern Standard Time, 3:00 Pacific Standard Time. And I just guide you through this journal writing practice. I can, if you want, I've got the link to it. Can I put it in the chat? Would that work?
You can, or if people go to your website, they can find it, right?
Yeah, it's on there. It's called So Now What Journal Writing. And again, I just, I've had sometimes 600 people show up, sometimes 5 people show up. I show up every time. I sit right here with my grandmother's lamp right here.
Love it.
And my hummingbird right there, which is my other grandmother's. And I lead you through this one thing that really helps you figure out how to use the written word to shed the past, embrace the present, and move forward in your life. Because writing is such a powerful tool.
I love your grandmother's stuff. I saw the post today you did on Facebook with the flowers that your daughter got you in your grandmother's vase. That was so beautiful.
And this is her china cabinet right here.
Yeah. So if you don't follow Laura, follow her on Facebook too, because there's some great stuff on there as well. And then Zibby, Instagram's probably the best place for you. Is that where you do everything?
Yes, at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to close with, and I'm going to put you both on the spot, and I know because it's hard for me too. What book you can answer either what you're excited about now? I know.
Don't ask me what I'm reading.
It doesn't have to be new. Just throw a book out there that you think people should read. So it doesn't have to be something that's brand spanking new.
I got an answer for you.
All right.
This is one of my very favorite authors on the planet, Terry Tempest Williams. And she and I shouldn't announce this right now. Anyway, she is the reason why Yes, announcement to come. She is the reason why I had the courage to write a memoir. She is one of my literary heroines. And this is her newest book called Erosion. And if you don't know who Terry Tempest Williams is, you need to. You can begin with her book, Refuge. And my favorite book of hers, and I haven't read this yet, I can't wait, is When Women Were Birds. And I'm also really enjoying this book. I don't know if you've heard of this author before. Really enjoying this one too, because I love essays, and personal essay is a big thing of mine. So these are the two books that are on my.
And essays are so great because you can dip into them and dip it. It's like there's. I mean, I've found myself reading all kinds of different things during this pandemic, but it's like the poems and the essays are really something that it's like it's easy to jump in and jump back out again. Okay, Zibby, you got to give us one book. Got to give us one.
Well, I'm reading Nanabelle by Anna Quinlan because I'm interviewing her next week. I'm super excited.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
She's fantastic. Oh, fantastic. Ladies, it's been wonderful having you both. What a great conversation.
Really, this is so fun. And thank you so much, Laura, for asking me to join you. What a treat. This has been like soulful and amazing. And I feel like restored on some level. So Montana adjacent here.
Exactly. We're living it in our brains, right?
In our brains.
Why don't we get Julie and Zibby and all friends of Julie and Zibby out here, and we can do our own Haven writing retreat. And
boy, I just got chills. That sounds like a really fun.
Let's do it. Horses, and I mean, it's all equine assisted learning. You don't have to know anything about horses, but the main thing is just to be out here and let this place give itself to us, which I try to do every day. But don't forget, look up, notice the birds. There's a lot of lessons there. I love you all. Thank you so much for having me. What a gift.
I'll take us off of Facebook Live now. Good night, everybody. This recording stays here, so if you missed any of it, it'll be here for you to come back to. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Julie. Bye, Zibby.